Today I want to talk a little bit about establishing boundaries and also why not having boundaries can be a recipe for disaster in your life. My name is Salvador Briggman. Welcome to the Life of Freedom YouTube channel, and it's coming up right after this. Okay, let's talk about establishing boundaries in your life and also the types of people that do not establish boundaries and sort of how to improve this area of your life. So first of all, I find that people that have difficulty establishing boundaries, number one, either have low self-esteem and they don't believe, like for whatever reason, that they deserve boundaries in their life. So maybe they're really good at sticking up for their child, or they're really good at, if one of their friends gets insulted by a random person, they're really good at sticking up for their friends or other people in their life. They believe that the people in their life deserve good quality things, and they're very, passionate and almost willing to stick up for their boundaries. But when it comes to their own, they're like, it's okay, or don't worry, or, I don't need that. And they rationalize reasons to not stick up for their own boundaries or not to establish them in the first place. So basically, they're too nice and giving and caring people. The first type is too nice, too caring, and typically, I also say like low self-esteem. Yeah, I don't mean to characterize it that way, but that's just kind of how it is. This is because they want people to be happy. They want other individuals to be happy, and they want to be loved. These are typically the reasons why boundaries fail to be established, though of course there are so many other ones. Maybe they have some past trauma that makes it difficult. Maybe they just don't understand how to establish boundaries, or for whatever reason they're just not. To kind of connect some of these, I find another reason why people don't establish boundaries, this kind of ties in with the low self-esteem, is they don't believe they have value. They have no value, or they don't deserve it, or don't want to go through the hassle of it. They don't want the hassle. So it could be like, someone kind of steps over their boundaries and is like, no, it's okay. I mean, it's fine. I can deal with that. Don't worry. I don't want to inconvenience this other person. I don't want them to get upset. These are all rationalizations that stem from not believing that you are deserving of that boundary. There are a lot of places where this can kind of manifest itself, if you will, in your life. So it could happen in relationships with your significant other. It could happen in friendships. It could happen in your workspace where you don't have any boundaries when it comes to your boss or your other employees. It could happen in the school, wherever it is you are. Typically, boundaries are really important when it comes to the relationships overall in our life, but it could also just be boundaries with ourselves, that you're not willing to let yourself do something, or you're not willing to let your standards slip so low in your life. So it could be boundaries, the relationship that you have with other people, or it could be the boundaries that you have in your own life and with yourself. The first step to establishing healthy boundaries, number one, is to identify negative beliefs, and these are usually patterns. Negative beliefs or rationalizations as to why a boundary is not deserved. So talking about like some of the beliefs here, like, it's okay, don't worry, I don't want to upset them, or I don't want to inconvenience them. That is an example of a negative belief. Or I don't really deserve that, it's okay, it's fine. Or maybe with an employer, I don't really want to upset them because I might be fired. Identifying negative beliefs can be a little bit difficult at first, because if you sit down and you're rational about it, you're like, no, I don't think that, or no, I don't believe that way. But if you actually pay attention to this little talking voice in your head, someone does something to you or someone acts a certain way with you, that voice kind of speaks up. They're like, oh, you're really worthless, or that person is completely right, you don't deserve that thing. Or that little person talks up and is like, well, it's okay, you don't want to cause any upset, you don't want to cause any disturbances in the social environment, or no one will like you, you'll be branded as that person that's always being annoying, or is being a little bit more assertive. You don't want to be branded that way, you want to get along with all these people. This voice in your head, number one, is always talking, but number two is kind of like your worst enemy. You know what I mean? That voice is the one that's kind of affirming all of these negative beliefs. So what you want to do to identify some of these is just throughout your life, paying a little bit more attention to what that voice says, number one. and starting to write it down. And if you have a journal, that would be great, or just starting to make a note of this. Start to write down some of those negative things that voice is saying. And in addition, that voice might be you telling yourself that, or it could be someone else. You might hear that voice from your mother or your father, or a boyfriend that you had, or a girlfriend that you had, or a friend, or something like that. Pay attention to what the voice is saying, and also who is saying it, and also what kind of activity, and how does that make you feel. Start to catalog all of these different things and identify some of these negative beliefs that you have when it comes to your boundaries. The next is to challenge them. This is actually more of like a therapeutic technique. You want to directly challenge every single thing that you've written down. So is it true that you are not deserving of someone speaking to you in a certain way? Or is it true that you really have no value in the workplace, and it doesn't matter what your boss says to you or does to you, that you kind of have to be at the effect of that? Or when it comes to a significant other, that you are stupid, or you are unattractive, or you are fat? Is that empirically true? And oftentimes, if you actually sit down and you challenge that belief and you come up with examples, counter examples to sort of counter-sway that fact, you will come up with a lot of them. Start to think about and challenge some of these beliefs and find counter examples. This is an ongoing process. This isn't like you do it one time and it's solved. You're gonna have to, every single time that those beliefs, those negative things come up, you're gonna have to challenge them and say, is that actually true? And to use the thinking part of your brain to say, no, it's not. That is false. That is not true. The third is to examine the boundaries that you give for others. So think about some of the people in your life. There's probably a person in your friend group who is very boisterous and confident and loud and outgoing. Think about the boundaries that they have. If they were in the same social situation as you and someone talked to them that way, what would they do? Would they lash out and be like, would they start cursing them out? Like, would they respond? Would they assert their boundaries? Start to think about and examine the boundaries that other people have in their life, or the boundaries that you allow other people to have, like your child. It's not okay if someone says something or says something negative to your child, you stick up for them, obviously, or a friend. Think about the boundaries that you're giving other people, and also how small the boundaries are that you're giving yourself. And start to try and reconcile the two a little bit. What is healthy that every human being should have when it comes to their boundaries? And also, what are the things that you care about? This is the very beginning of sort of scraping together what are going to be your new set of standards for your life and your new boundaries when it comes to your life. The final, and we could go way more in depth in this, but I want to keep the video, I don't want to do a super long video. The final part of this is actually asserting those newfound boundaries. And that's kind of the hardest part, honestly. You feel timid, like you feel like you're gonna get pushback, you're gonna get into a confrontation. A lot of people that lack boundaries also are not that great when it comes to social confrontation, or they're not willing to assert their boundaries, and that's why people are always encroaching on them. So the fourth part is assert your boundaries. And you kind of do this in a step-by-step process. So the first is going to be verbal. You're probably going to do that at least maybe 2, maybe 3 times. The third is actually starting to take some action. And finally, you might have to then either remove yourself from the situation, or you might have to cut out that individual from your life. So just say that, here's a good boundary. One time I was dating a girl, and this other guy was like hitting on her and very blatantly was interested in her and was kind of trying to like play it off. And I asserted the boundary that that is not okay. So I verbally did that. Now, once that happens, you then kind of wait to see which box someone puts themselves in. Are they in the box of, okay, I respect your boundaries, or okay, I don't respect your boundaries? Second time that happens, you then have to assert them again, saying, hey, I told you this before. This is not okay. I want you to stop this right now. This is important to me, and this is also a boundary. It's also important to think about maybe how things will go if this continues. So I'm going to break up with you. I'm not going to tolerate this. I'm going to cut you out of my life. You don't want to obviously escalate that quickly if it's something that's minor, but if it's very important to you, then it's important to other person to realize what this means in the context of a relationship or you with the other person. So they've violated your boundary twice. If this happens again, this is what's going to happen. So that's kind of when we get more into like the action side, and that's kind of a little bit more confrontational. So if you are in person and someone's asserting your boundary, I think that is encroaching on your boundary, I think the best thing honestly you can do is just to remove yourself from that situation and to not be friends with that person, or to not be in a relationship with that person, or to not, for whatever way, be in contact with the person. That's kind of the most passive and probably the friendly way to do it, is just cut that person out of your life. Don't give them any attention. Don't allow them in any way to be a part of it. Another way you might have to, assert your boundaries would be to call out that person verbally in a setting and be like, why the fuck are you being an asshole? Or why are you doing this? This is not okay. And to start imposing your own will a little bit on that person. So raising your voice, or even shouting at them a little bit, or being a little bit more cursing towards them, like, cursing them out a little bit. You might have to do that. And I'm just being honest here. Like, obviously I'm all for spirituality and peace and these different things. But if someone starts yelling at me, one time I was moderating a panel, and this guy got up and started yelling and these different things, and I had to confront him and basically be like, no, this is not okay. And I had to speak over him and continually speak over him until he stopped talking, as a way to say, I'm confronting you, this is not okay, this is a boundary, sit down. Very rarely, and usually this is only more if like, I don't know, alcohol is involved, or some other substances, you might have to be a bit more physical. You might have to slap someone, or you might even have to like get into a fight and punch someone. That is also in a micro, in a larger scale, so on a macro scale, how boundaries are asserted within our society. When someone encroaches on someone else's boundary, let's just say one religious group on another, or one state on another, or one country on another, boundaries are asserted first verbally, then more escalated verbally, then these are the consequences, and finally, when boundaries are super, encroached upon, countries go to war. There's physical violence that is resulted because either two people don't get along, or because boundaries are being encroached upon. Like, jumping off of that point, some of my female friends in New York City, they try to assert their boundaries, maybe like when someone is like catcalling them or something like that, but they're not able to, or that person is persistent. So one of the ways that they find to get more confidence is by taking self-defense classes, or carrying around an object, like mace or something like that, that they can use to defend themselves if necessary, if it ever escalated to that point. And I'm 100% for that. I think it's really important to be able to be confident in asserting your boundaries in not only a verbal, but also a physical way. If this content resonates with you and it gave you a little bit of thinking about maybe your own boundaries and some of the things that you want to establish for your own life, I would love it if you could subscribe to the Life of Freedom channel, this channel. Give me a comment down below, let me know what you think, and also check out some of the other videos that I got out there on spirituality, and also on different elements of psychology, your life, finding meaning, etc. It would mean a lot. Again, my name is Salvador Briggman, and I will see you next time.